Okay, I'll say it. Daniel Ricciardo has not had a great 2022 season, not even a good 2022 season. But what's happening to his career right now is absolutely crazy. The drivers' market has gone into absolute meltdown over the last couple of weeks, and it's left Daniel Ricciardo, of all people, with many questions to answer regarding where he's going to be in 2023. The rumour mill around Daniel Ricciardo started spinning around about Monaco when McLaren came out and discussed the fact that Daniel Ricciardo's contract for 2023 wasn't watertight and there was room for potential changes if and when they were needed. It was a very weighted statement from the McLaren team on Daniel Ricciardo, and probably a big wake-up call for the Australian driver as well, although he did hit back, saying that he believes he has what it takes to commit himself to that McLaren seat for the 2023 season. Fast forward 6 Grand Prix and it hasn't really gotten any better for Daniel Ricciardo. Currently still sits 12th in the driver's standings, 19 points picked up so far this season, only 4 points finishes over the course of the 13 races, and it hasn't all been his fault, but it's still not looking great, and therefore he looks set to be replaced by fellow countryman Oscar Piastri. After the Alpine team, who may as well have set their factory on fire at this point, have lost out on another Formula 1 driver. That's Zhou, Alonso and Piastri, all in quick succession over the course of the last few months in Formula 1. And what's frustrating is they had 4 drivers there who probably are going to be on the grid next season. All 4 of them deserve their place in Formula 1. But only one of them is going to end up at Alpine, and it's going to be Esteban Ocon. And that Oscar Piastri deal probably feels like a little bit of a stab in the back for Daniel Ricciardo, as he probably thought he had at least until the end of the season to show whether or not he was capable of keeping that McLaren seat. But the McLaren team has clearly had other ideas and has got in a replacement for Daniel Ricciardo before we even head into the second half of the season. And as I said, Daniel Ricciardo can probably feel a little bit hard done by for this, because some of the problems that he has had over the first half of the season haven't always been his fault, and his poor form is not just down to his poor driving, but also down to McLaren as well. But with the writing on the wall, where does that leave Daniel Ricciardo in 2023, and what options does he actually have moving forward? Let's take a look at the seats and the contract situations and delve into those a little bit, because at this moment in time, there are 5 spaces still available on the 2023 Formula 1 grid. Zhou doesn't have a contract at Alfa Romeo for 2023. There's obviously the replacement for Alonso needed at Alpine now that he's moved to Aston Martin. AlphaTauri are still yet to decide on Tsunoda's future at the team. Mick Schumacher was supposed to have contract talks last week, but Haas have stalled them onwards, so there's still a space at Haas. And of course, Nicholas Latifi, the situation is very much up in the air at Williams. Out of those 5, I would probably say there are 3 Daniel Ricciardo has a chance at getting. The 2 that I don't think are available to him are moving to Alfa Romeo. Zhou is a rookie at this moment in time, but I think he's done enough over the course of the first 13 races to warrant another year in Formula 1 and another year with that team. The 5 DNFs that he's picked up this season have not been his fault in any way whatsoever. Most of them have fallen with the team. Pre-Silverstone, it was looking like he was picking up a little bit of form. He was in Q3 quite often. He was finishing in and around the points more often. And I think the second half of the season will be another uptick for Zhou. And the second one I just can't quite see happening is a move to AlphaTauri for me. I know that Daniel Ricciardo obviously has those Red Bull links, was Max Verstappen's teammate not too long ago, but even though the Formula 2 Red Bull Juniors aren't setting the world on fire right now, I think that Red Bull are still thinking long term, and if they are going to replace Yuki Tsunoda, they'll still go with a young driver. They need someone to replace Sergio Perez in a few years' time. They need to start thinking about the future and who's going to be alongside Max Verstappen, and therefore I think they'd still go with a junior, even though Daniel Ricciardo is available. So for me, there's a space at Alpine, Haas and Williams that Daniel Ricciardo could be in the running for. So let's delve into those 3 options and what would be best for Daniel Ricciardo moving forward. Let's start with the highest rated of the bunch being Alpine. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo has massive experience of being with the team. He was their main man over the course of the 2019 and 20 seasons when they raced under the Renault name. Now here's the contentious issue, because he decided to move to McLaren in 2020. And he may have burned some bridges with the French outfit. We know how upset Cyril was after those Drive to Survive episodes, but there have been changes in the team, there have been changes to the dynamics, and Otmar is now in charge there, and he said that Daniel Ricciardo is a driver worth looking into. Plus, with Alpine looking to build on possibly a 4th place finish at the end of this season, I imagine they would be very happy to have a driver as experienced as Daniel Ricciardo back in there working with some of the engineers that he probably knew just 2 years ago. Haas are next up in terms of a competitive drive for Daniel Ricciardo. Interestingly, they were supposed to have contract talks with Mick Schumacher over the last week, but they've actually put that on hold after the craziness with Alonso and Piastri, which means that Haas might be actually looking at their options for 2023. And I think for Ricciardo, Haas could be a pretty good fit. He goes in there, has an opportunity to help a team that's going for a big change coming into this new 2022 era of Formula 1. And of course, it has the links with America, which we know Daniel Ricciardo loves to build. Which is why I think the link to Williams isn't too crazy either. Again, the American links will be a massive positive for Daniel Ricciardo and bring eyes to not only him, but to the Williams team as well, although the team is seemingly very far off the rest of the grid in terms of performance, which if you're Daniel Ricciardo and you believe that you can still win Grand Prix and possible championships is a huge undertaking and can lead to a lot of frustration when a 14th place finish is likely your average weekend. But at the same time, this does mean that there's less pressure to perform compared to the massive pressure that he's been under over the course of his seasons at McLaren. So maybe a season at Williams where you can just feel a little bit safer, a little bit calmer, and rebuild your confidence in Formula One is something that Daniel Ricciardo might actually want. Outside of Formula One, of course, there's the opportunity of Daniel Ricciardo moving to somewhere like IndyCar. And I personally think IndyCar would be an incredible home for a driver like Daniel Ricciardo. With the fan base and the draw that Daniel Ricciardo has, he would bring a brand new set of eyes to that sport. And let's face it, he'd go in there, he'd be an instant fan favourite of pretty much any team, and he'd elevate the level of the driving in there too. Or, of course, there's the other option being Formula E, which is seeing a really big new set of rule changes coming in over the next couple of seasons and is a massive opportunity for a new driver to jump in whilst the other drivers are still learning the new cars as well. Definitely giving Daniel Ricciardo the opportunity of winning races and challenging right at the top from the outset of being in there. But with Daniel Ricciardo stating that he'd like to stay in Formula One, both of these seem like a little bit of an outside option for Daniel Ricciardo right now, and may only come true if all of those other Formula One options we talked about all break down. But that's just my thoughts and feelings on the Daniel Ricciardo situation, and honestly, I'm a little bit upset that Daniel Ricciardo's career has gone this way. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below, though. Where do you see Daniel Ricciardo being in 2023? Is it Formula One? Which team is it in? Is it IndyCar? Is it Formula E? And whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers and we're edging ever closer. So every subscription massively makes a difference. Thank you so much again, and I will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. That was a nice way to send it off. Thank you. Oh, merci.